Hello, Thought Roomies, and welcome back. If you're new here, I'm your host, Hallie Rose. I'm coming to you this week from Eastern Canada on a beautiful retreat center that my parents own. And I've been tiptoeing around barefoot, and I'm currently on day 4 of a water fast. So I haven't eaten anything in about 90 hours. So there's no telling what I could actually say right now. Beware. But our interview this week is with Amanda Bucci, and this was done back in March, early March, right before things started to get a little crazy with COVID. And I had the opportunity to go to Amanda's apartment in Los Angeles. Amanda is one of the most amazing women I've ever met. I have so much respect for her. She's just turned 27. Actually, at the time of this interview, she was 26, and she'd already made millions of dollars. She has over 500,000 followers on Instagram. Why? Because she provides incredibly valuable content. And I don't say that lightly. I find it very hard in this day and age to find people who are producing content on social media that feels heart-centered and valuable. And Amanda absolutely is the queen of this. So we get into that in our interview. We talk about social media, consciousness, how to show up authentically, and also we dive into Amanda's ayahuasca journey at Soltara. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you've been hearing stories about ayahuasca and something in your soul is just whispering to you, I encourage you to do some research, to talk to some friends. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to the good people at Soltara and they'll answer any of your questions. If you do decide to book a retreat there, I also have a discount code for our listeners for $200 off any ayahuasca retreat at Soltara, and all you have to do is punch in all capitals Thought Room in the little discount box on their website, and you can access that. So without further ado, my friends, step into the Thought Room with me and Amanda Bucci. Amanda Bucci, welcome to the Thought Room. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
Yeah, of course. I'm so excited to do it. And I love the name of your podcast, by the way.
Thank you.
It really allows the listener to feel like they're in the thought room.
Yes, absolutely. I actually just this week released a podcast with a man called Ollie Allerton, and he is a former UK military special forces soldier, and he was at Soltara, which will definitely tie into this interview. And I end up telling him the story of how I chose the name.
Ooh, I have to go listen to that episode then.
Yeah. It's related to my own experiences with ayahuasca. So that's a good one.
That's pretty cool.
But we're sitting in your living room right now.
Yeah,
on the floor, all cozy. This is my favorite way to do a podcast.
Yeah, so much better.
Yeah, I've done some podcasts in some really strange and wonderful situations, as I'm sure you have. I think I heard, we were just talking about Aaron Alexander. I think that was it true that you guys did your podcast interview in a sauna?
Yeah, he actually does a lot of his interviews,
really?
he has a sauna in his place.
Well, maybe I'll get to do that.
I think that's part of the whole Aaron experience.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I think he does a lot, and he says that it helps with just like getting grounded and intimate and having a more real conversation in a sense.
Yeah. And will you have your own podcast, Bucci Radio? Do you do most of them from here, or have you done any podcasts in super weird places?
I've done one solo episode in a car, and a part of my learning of myself this year is around my creative process. And there was a part of my creative process that happened last year where I was recognizing the things that drained me of my creative energy. And a lot of that is obligation, have-tos, shoulds, doing things for the wrong reasons. A lot for me was in my business and just getting really wrapped up in the next financial goal, the next launch, the next have to this, the next whatever this, and feeling just totally drained of my life force energy. And I ended up taking 2 weeks off of everything in my business, content creation. And content creation for me is where I feel very alive and on purpose. And it was getting to a point where I was so burnt out from the shoulds, the have-tos, the obligations of creating for like a business goal. And it was getting to a point where I had a hard time getting on stories, writing captions, just doing things that I naturally have energy to do. So I decided to take 2 weeks off and just give myself permission to really take a break, which can feel really jarring for, number one, if you have your business online, but also just there's so much stuff wrapped up in the creating content all the time for content creators that, you know, it's like the dopamine that you get every day from like posting something and then feeling like you have to keep up with everybody and feeling like something bad's going to happen, like you'll become irrelevant or people will forget about you or maybe the algorithm will fuck you over. Any of these like little funny stories that we create from just being in it and being on all the time, which is actually a part of my book that I'm writing now too. The whole being on all the time thing. And I had to allow myself to really take time off and take a break and give myself permission because I was so in my own, just really burnt out energy around the whole thing. So I took the 2 weeks off and I got all of the downloads that I really needed to get. And I gave myself the exact space that I needed to receive, to open my energetic channel to receive whatever was really coming next, which was just a lot of like brand pivoting stuff that I really needed to just sit and listen to. And by the time I actually felt ready to create again, I was like, oh my God, I have a spark. And I'm like in the car on the way to somewhere in maybe San Diego, I think it was. And I had my podcast thing and I was like, I'll just record an episode now because I have energy. And like energy was a precious resource at that point. So I have recorded in a car, but actually I've recorded in a car twice. Yeah, not the best audio, but it works.
I love this idea of, well, you just said opening the energetic channel. And I'm thinking about the story you told and how many people are listening to this right now going, yes, that's me. It's like, I don't have the inspiration anymore. And the fear of taking time out, what you said about the algorithm being, I'm interested to hear your take because you are like the mage of all, you're just like an absolute wizard with the social media stuff. And how much of that is true about taking a break and the algorithms?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So my approach to social media and teaching people the mechanics of how it all works is really coming from a place of personal development first. So my thought on the algorithm thing is, no, you will not be forgotten about. You will not be irrelevant. You might have some small bit of needing to kind of gain momentum back when you go off for a little while or whatever, but it is not going to do anything bad to your account mechanics wise. What is going to happen, well, actually, before I say what is going to happen, what the worst thing you could possibly do is to keep creating from a place of should and have to and obligation, because energetically, people feel that. People feel that you don't want to be there. And people's, I say bullshit-o-meter, but like the ability to exchange energy and read people's body language and read people's brands now through social media is heightened and is continuing to heighten more and more. Whereas 5-10 years ago, you could follow somebody and not know who they are at all. And now we're putting more and more of ourselves online and we can really feel people's energy. So when you're showing up to something that you don't want to, it is felt regardless of if people know that consciously or unconsciously.
So you're saying it, I mean, in some ways it might be better to not put any content for a short time rather than stay consistent and put content that's inauthentic.
And I think that there's a really interesting line of understanding I like to talk about what's out of alignment versus out of the comfort zone. Because sometimes out of your comfort zone is where you grow, where you challenge yourself, where you push yourself, where you develop new skills that you haven't developed yet, where you move past resistance, you move past fear, right? And that's growth inducing. And a lot of the time we don't feel comfortable doing social media posting really consistently. And it's not natural to us and it feels uncomfortable. And it can be really easy to just use the excuse of this is just out of alignment for me because it's hard. And that's not always necessarily true. You do have to, like anything, decide and learn for yourself with discernment and experience. You know what? This is where I'm feeling my truth is that I need to take a break so I can understand what's underneath this feeling versus, you know what, I'm just using it as an excuse to not be consistent because I'm feeling challenged by it, if that makes sense.
Definitely. So going back to what I was looping to before with this idea of becoming a clear, energetic channel, I love that phrase. And I think some people listening are going, yeah, I know exactly what she means. And other people are going, what? Huh? Energy, what?
Yeah.
And curious as to what that actually looked like for you in process. So you have these 2 weeks, you're like, okay, I'm going to be off social media or off my phone altogether. I don't know how that looked for you. And then I'm going to become an air quotes, clear energetic channel. Yeah. Like tell me more about that.
Yeah. Honestly, I've really been playing with that one so much because when you're on social media and when you're putting yourself out there, what ends up happening is you get so much input. You're constantly receiving input, whether you like it or not. You're consuming content, you're following people, and it's very difficult to try to run away from this or not be affected by it. But whether you are consciously aware of this or not, you are affected and your psyche is relating to yourself, relating to other people. It's set up for comparison. It's set up for self-judgment. It's set up to like really mirror back to you things that are uncomfortable, like how you relate to your value and worth dependent on how many likes your post is getting or how many people are messaging you back or what other people are doing or how consistent they're being. And like it's constant input. And that can really, really fog what's authentic to you. And it can get really foggy and funky up in your head. And when it's foggy and funky up in your head, there's so many more internal barriers to you just creating and being, again, that clear channel for ideas to come through. And if there's stuckness somewhere inside of you because of that, you'll find tons of resistance. You'll find that it's really hard to show up for whatever reason. It doesn't always have to be stuff on social media. It could be stuff in your personal life, or maybe you haven't had a hard conversation you need to have, and that's really weighing on you, and it's keeping you from feeling just open. And I like, for me, I feel the most open when my heart feels really open, when I have clarity in my life, when I feel like there's nothing going on that's keeping me stuck. And we can totally create from a place of have to and motivation and like, I'm going to be consistent no matter what's going on in my life, right? Like we can push through, and we're good at that as humans. We can figure a way out of something, and we can even use social media and work and content and whatever we're doing as a means of distracting ourselves, right? But if you're on the path of really being honest with yourself and processing your emotions and feeling your feelings and looking at your own stuff, that's inevitably going to somewhat at least get in the way of your own authenticity and your own ability to serve people online, to share your gifts in the way that makes you feel alive, sharing them. So for my process, it was I identified what it was that had a lot of like stuff around it. And for me, that was feeling obligated to show up on stories, feeling obligated to post specific things for specific launches of specific offers that I had, feeling like there was no room for me to think about other things except for that, because it was just building up so much stuff inside of me that I felt like that was all I was thinking about. And I was in a lot of self-judgment of like, why can't I perform? Why can't I do this? Why? And at that point I was like, there's no room for me to process whatever this is, because there's a feeling of obligation of putting my energy outward. And what I really need to do is go inward. You can't go inward when you're constantly outward. So I found that how important it was to really take breaks. And I recommend at least a quarterly social media detox, at least. And similar to cleaning out your closet, like a quarterly unfollow spree. It's just, I think so many more people are doing that nowadays. And I think it's really important. And the effect that's actually having on the market is that people are only following the people that really resonate with them. And what's happening to creators is that they are recognizing that the only way to really resonate with their people is to be authentic. And it's so much less.
I love that.
This is like the stuff I'm writing about for my book, which feels just so exciting to talk about it. And yeah, it's like a lot of people are recognizing that I think consumers are looking for things really specific to them now, and they're not available to follow people or influencers or content creators or entrepreneurs that are kind of lukewarm to them. They're like, I want to follow less than a couple hundred people, and I used to follow these people, and like it no longer resonates. So I'm really going to be connecting and following with accounts that really connect with me for the phase that I'm at in my life. And how that's working is that now people are just, I think, allowing themselves to be where they're at in the phase of their life, rather than curating so heavily for, I hope I get more followers. It's almost like in the community that I'm in anyway, and I think this is really just beginning, because obviously there's still so many people that want to do whatever they can to get more followers. But in my optimistic point of view of things, I think it's trending towards people allowing themselves to be like, you know what, I'm going to pivot. And if that means losing followers, that's totally fine. Or I'm going to post about this because I really care about this. And if that means I cut off a part of my current audience that was already here for one other thing, that's totally fine, because I have to and I can't not. And that just allows the right people to connect with the right people at the end of the day. And I think it's so beautiful. And the book that I'm writing is all about how social media is a mechanism for conscious awakening. And that's the
What's the name of the book?
I don't have the working title is Social Media, A Journey Home.
Okay.
I don't think that'll be the real title though. So
when do you anticipate roughly this?
March 2021 is like the anticipated.
Cool. Great.
Yeah. So not too far, about a year.
Okay. So social media and consciousness. I love this. It's like so many people would look at those two things. They'd be like, yeah, they're like the opposite of each other. They're totally not connected. So tell me these are obviously two loves of your life. Mm-hmm. And how on earth did these start to knit themselves together in a way that it's now being birthed into a book?
So much of my own journey. So much of it. So for my journey, I got on Instagram in 2014. That was 6 years ago now. So I was 20. I'm 26 now. When I was 20, I know. Good math.
Spring chicken.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah. But it's cool because I feel like I feel like I've been so many people in the last 6 years, which is, I don't think would have ever happened had I not been on social media. Ever. Everything I do now is all because of social media. And it's so funny because we are so quick to call social media like just this cesspool of trash and just yucky people everywhere. And it's annoying and it's addictive and it's like bad for our health and our minds and our dopamine. And yes, and it's also helping so many people find their tribe faster. It's birthed movements, like, and helped really powerful movements spread like wildfire. like the plant medicine movement, the body positivity movement, stuff around feminism, stuff around racism. Like so many things are spreading to so many more people faster that would have never touched them. I don't know if I would have ever found plant medicine had it not been for social media. Maybe,
Really?
I mean, I would have moved here without it. So maybe, but the thread of my life connected me to certain people and this, and I never really heard about it until a couple of years ago. And I don't know how
Where
fast.
did you first hear about plant medicine?
It was with a group of entrepreneur friends that I met in LA that I would have never met had it not been for social media. It's just,
Yeah.
I can trace so many things. And again, maybe and probably, but how fast? Who knows? And it's, I think, again, it's the acceleration piece, because the quickness to which you can find things and the way people are consuming media on social media now is they're searching for things that they want. And spiritually, we can think about it. It's just like we're called to become certain people, and things show up in our lives that are calling to us. Like they always say, plant medicine calls to you. You don't do ayahuasca unless it really calls to you. There's so many people that have done other psychedelics but don't do ayahuasca because they're like, it hasn't called to me. And I think that's a really cool way to understand how that also happens on social media. Like things, you attract things because you have your own spiritual curriculum and you have your own experience of life to live and challenges to go through and learn from. So for my journey as a 20-year-old, I got on Instagram. I was really into fitness. I lived in Rhode Island. I was in nursing school. I started posting about my fitness journey. I had my account on private for a while because I was terrified of being judged by my friends in college. I made my account unprivate. I was posting workouts all the time, meals all the time, just like so into what I was doing. I found a community and a tribe of people that were like me, which made me feel really like I belonged. Whereas where I was, I only felt like I belonged because I was in the same nursing program with other people. Like there was just not that many places where I connected with people. Like there, the regular kind that you have in college and with friends, but on a deeper level, I was craving someone that understood the thing that I liked. And I was like going to the gym all the time and going to spin class and bodybuilding and all the things. And I then started a YouTube channel because I was like, I have a lot to say about this. I want to have a platform that I can talk rather than just write some captions. So I started making videos, and I moved to LA officially after I graduated nursing school in 2015. And as I was moving out here, I was studying for my nursing exam, but at the same time, I had just gotten a couple of fitness clients because of Instagram. I had at this point like 20,000 followers or something, and things were just really going quickly. And I got my first supplement sponsorship, and they paid me $1,000 a month in commission, and it was great. And I was super excited, and I was like able to pay my rent by myself after I had just graduated and living in LA. And I was like, this is awesome. Like I have no expectations, but it just seems like it's going to keep getting better. And at that point, I really didn't know a whole lot of information about myself. I knew that I was good at school. Like I got A's and B's, and like I was smart and that whole thing. The reason I picked nursing is because I liked helping people, air quotes. And that's like such a low level self-awareness thing. And it was enough to like choose somewhat of a career. But the funny thing is I got into fitness, and having a nursing background really helped give me some street cred to talk about fitness and not look too dumb. Like I didn't know what I was talking about, or I had no credentials.
Because
like,
you knew the anatomy, or
yeah, at least there was like a science background. So in the bodybuilding world, there was a huge world around evidence-based, research-based fitness. And as the influencer world came around, that community would judge the influencers who are talking about fitness because they're not credentialed. And there's like a whole little funny drama in that world. So I at least had like a little bit of street cred, enough to not be enough to be like respected in some respects as like a young 21, 22-year-old teaching people and making videos about fitness. because I was still learning, obviously, but I was doing my best to get information from my coach and watch other people's videos and ask people questions and like, not overstep my area of expertise. So I make a bunch of videos. I end up taking the nursing exam. I don't pass the nursing exam. It was really, really, really challenging for me to do the practice questions because I was slowly losing passion for it and building passion for this other thing. And at that point, I was like, I have to make a decision. Do I retake this test or do I just keep going with this random internet thing that I'm doing? Like at that point in 2015, it was a lot less than it was now. So I decided, you know what? The only thing really holding me back is time. And I don't feel passionate about this. And I'm going to go with this other thing, with the fitness thing. So in 2016, I went from 6,000 subscribers on YouTube to 100,000 in 6 months or less. And I was making 4 to 5 videos a week. And each video was 20 to 30 minutes long. And they were each getting between 30 and 40,000 views. So 30 or 40,000 people were spending like 30 minutes with me a day, which is a lot of time.
Were you surprised? Like when this started to happen, were you just like, who are these people? What's going on?
I mean, the whole influencer world is so weird and so interesting. It's just like
for the ego too.
For the ego, for sure.
You want to feel, you want to allow yourself to be like, wow, this is great. I'm resonating with people. Mm-hmm. But then you also don't want to
you don't want to
spin out of control.
Yeah. Well, that kind of happened. So there was tons of positive validation happening. Like, oh my God, I love these videos. You're so great. Thank you so much. And that allowed me to kind of keep going. But the moment that I got some negative feedback, obviously a huge hit to the ego. So really had to learn how to receive feedback with neutrality. And not take it personally, which was a whole journey and a whole experience and a whole lesson of becoming someone that was self-assured and myself. I had to like trust my own self-image and not let it be determined by random people that thought I was fat, that thought I was dumb, that thought I was this, that don't like that I wear 2 different fucking colored socks. Like people will just say such weird Girl, YouTube is a weird place.
There's a lot of angry people on YouTube.
Which is just a reflection of the consciousness of humanity right now. Like there's plenty of different levels of humans and they're all
Do you remember
themselves.
that first negative comment? Like, do you remember?
I don't remember what it was, but I have a couple of experiences of big negative, like, things. So I had one person make a video she was an angry vegan and was like mad that I was eating chicken. And then I had another experience where I partnered with a friend of mine. And this was actually, so fast forward just a little bit. Sorry, my dog's doing something so funny over there in his crate. He's licking the crate.
Oh, he looks so...
It's so weird.
He's like licking through the crate. He's making faces at us. This is adorable.
It's really
This is when I wish we had video. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's really cute. Oh. I was just like distracted. So I had after I did a bunch of fitness competitions, so when you do a lot of fitness competitions, your metabolism slows down. And what happens to a lot of competitors is they end up developing eating, like really problematic eating issues. And they also tend to gain a lot of weight after they do a competition because your metabolism is slow, your body is starving, and you really can't stop eating. Like it's a huge issue. So after I did my last fitness competition, I had done 8 and I recorded, I think, 6 of them for YouTube. Some of them, 2 of them, there were 3 per season. So I would do a whole prep and I would document it. And then I would show people what I like, the whole shows and stuff like that. I ended up gaining 30 pounds. And this was like after I had 220,000 subscribers. So as I'm like gaining weight and still making videos, I'm getting all these people saying how fat I am and just that whole situation.
Wow.
I know it sounds funny. There's actually so many more worse things that happen than that, but that can absolutely be can throw so many people off. And if your self-image is attached to how you look, and of course a lot of mine was, because I had grown an audience where people are just watching my body change every single day. Like, here's my body update. Here's my prep update. Like, here's what I look like today.
With like hyper awareness, like eagle eye, because they're trying to emulate you.
Totally. Yeah. They're like, oh my God, you look amazing. You're so shredded.
Wow.
All this. Yeah. It's such an interesting little world. So gaining weight, people project their own insecurities onto that. And they're like, wow, you are gaining weight. Like, I don't like you now. It's so interesting. Oh my God. I can't even get into the psychology of that going back.
Oh, man.
So I gained the weight. I ended up doing a powerlifting competition, which was really my first switch in industry, because I was really niche in the bikini space. And then I went into the powerlifting world, which was really cool and really empowering. And here's what my body can do capability wise versus how it can just look. And at that point, it was the end of 2016, and I had made 400 videos. and I was like, am I going to keep making videos for the rest of my life? Is my business and income going to be reliant on the brand partnerships that I have and the current fitness regimen that I'm going on? And I really wanted just a normal fitness regimen. I didn't feel like documenting it anymore. I was just like tired of the whole thing. And I ended up finding a business mastermind. And I didn't know what that was, but it was Lewis Howes had it, and he has a big podcast, and he's a really great connector. And I joined this mastermind, and I had no clue what I was getting myself into. The only reason I got in it was definitely because I had an audience, and so many people struggle to build an audience. And I joined, and there were so many people that do digital marketing and courses, and they have teams and all like webinars and all these cool things. And I learned all of this stuff, and I switched into the business space really quickly, because I was like, you know what? I can teach people how to build an audience and start a coaching business, because that's what I did. So I do that. I have a friend.
How old are you at this point?
This is 2017. So I am 23.
Wow.
Yeah. 23 turning 24.
And what's your family thinking? They're like, okay, Amanda's not nursing. She's living off these brand partnerships right now.
I made like $225,000 in 2016.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know. It was all just happening.
Wow.
And obviously I didn't have like a business background, but I was like, I'm doing something here. Mm-hmm. So I can like reverse engineer my process. And there's a huge industry that's emerging for the first time. No one knows what's going on because it's new. Nothing like this has ever happened in history. People used to have to get like asked to be sponsored if they're a celebrity or if they're a really high level athlete. The only people that were in the limelight were celebrities and actresses, and they weren't even putting their actual personalities out there. They're putting their character's personality out there. So this is a totally new field. And I was like, it's working. I don't know.
Yeah, girl.
Yeah. So I switched into business coaching. I didn't necessarily know how to do it, but I had a lot of support. And I ended up doing a podcast and like a collaboration with a friend of mine, and he had a health coaching business. And we did a collaboration where I put him on my podcast, and he had a program, and we did a launch for his program. And when that happened, his program was geared toward helping people heal their relationship with food. And that's a huge industry now. It's really awesome. But back then, my fitness audience of like young women a lot of whom have struggled with eating disorders and emotional eating and really problematic eating behaviors, some of his language on the copy, which I wasn't aware enough to understand was problematic, was very upsetting for so many people, to the point where Twitter, there was like a 3-day long outbreak of like slamming my name into the ground. Like, Amanda Bucci is taking advantage of people who have eating disorders and trying to make money off of them. And then they were like, she has a program and she's charging this much money for it. She's a scam artist. She's this, her body, her boyfriend. Like 3 days straight, I could refresh Twitter every 20 minutes and there'd be like 100 new tweets of like threads and people talking about the ethics and this is bad and we should call the police. And like, oh my God.
How do you survive those 3 days? Like, that is, I mean,
It was nuts, dude.
I've had like minor things where you wake up and you get the notification and someone's like, have you seen this or that? And you're just like, no, that's not how it was meant to be construed. But I cannot imagine an onslaught of that magnitude.
Yeah.
How do you cope with that?
Well, in the 3 couple of days I had, my partner we were living together. I had a friend that was in a totally different industry. She does online courses and webinars and she's awesome. And she was like, what is this universe that you're in? Like this weird YouTube, like I don't have any of this. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I also had a mastermind that weekend with mastermind group and they all were super supportive. But what I learned, what the lesson was that regardless of the positive validation or the negative validation, you have to validate yourself. And it was a lesson and an experience for me to, number one, learn where maybe I was out of integrity or, how to position things better and how to language things better and why marketing is so important and why integrity is so important and how people can misconstrue things completely so easily. So number one, just like leveling up in that kind of way, which was a really hard lesson. But if you have influence and you have an audience, you have to take that seriously. And so many people avoid social media because they're scared of that happening because they don't want to say the wrong thing. Because all we have is our own perception. And there's so many ways that things can be misconstrued. But what a cool opportunity to learn how to understand different types of humans and how they perceive things to then curate a better awareness and understanding of humanity so you can touch more people and reach more people respectfully and using the right language that, not to say that we have to, not offend people all the time, but just understanding. It really taught me where other people's triggers were and where my triggers were and where I was unsure of myself and where I was scared and where I was insecure. And then where other people were really taking things the wrong way and really, really, really learning how to hold in my own space and not allow that to penetrate me because it did. It absolutely did. And it's really hard not to let it get into your energetic space. It's really hard not to take it personally. It's really hard not to let it affect you emotionally. But what I learned is that authenticity and just being who you are can be very triggering as a default for so many people. And I think that there's a cool balance between being yourself. It's like in the middle, there's like the great balance. And then on one end, there's overly people pleasing and being overly nice and being overly vanilla as to not trigger or offend anyone, where you're hiding parts of yourself in your shadow or just your personality that you think people won't like. And for a recovering people pleaser, I've grown up my whole life shutting parts of myself down out of fear someone won't like it or it'll be hurtful for somebody else. And then on the other end, there's just being yourself and not thinking about other people and not thinking about their feelings or considering them or kind of seeing or thinking for yourself, how might someone perceive this? And you can just be totally off the scale on that end. So there's a really nice balance of having boundaries and having clarity on what it is that you want to say, but and actually being yourself, but considering, can I say this in the most respectful way to as many people as humanly possible? And can I actually find a way to be okay with just saying it and just existing in that space? And I think that's what one of the most important things that social media really does for us is you quickly, if you have an audience, experience how people are perceiving what you're saying. And then you can learn so much through how other people are experiencing you.
I love that. There's like this golden G spot in between, I don't give a fuck what you think, and like, I really need your validation world. It's like we're bridging gaps in understanding. And this has come up a lot recently in the topic of kind of like spiritual awakening and spiritual development, because I have a lot of friends who have been talking openly about how the intensity of things feels like it's picking up for them, and they're, getting downloads of this and that and what needs to be done. And I love that people are kind of coming out about what's going on for them in their awakening.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I am erring on the side of encouraging people to present their stories in a very grounded way.
Yeah.
Because there's, a risk of kind of coming across as a little bit melodramatic or fluffy or woo-woo with these things. Right. And I think that it probably goes back to the why of like, why am I sharing this? Is my ultimate goal to make it accessible and relatable for people? Or am I trying to make it about me and my experience, which is, also fine.
Well,
but
I love that. I feel like it's a powerful practice to always have and ask yourself, what place am I sharing from? And if you're sharing from a place of desiring to get something out of the share from the people you're sharing it with, for yourself or for feeling better, or maybe you're using it as like a way to purge or vent or whatever, kind of on that end where you're not really fully integrated and embodied with your share. Or are you sharing from that grounded place of like, okay, I've integrated this lesson. And for me, whenever I share something, I just shared something really vulnerable 2 days ago on Instagram about being with my partner, John.
I read that.
Yeah. As he's in the past gone through feeling really suicidal. And I absolutely recommend sharing things from a place of like, okay, I'm really ready to own this story, but I'm not in it anymore. And I feel like when you're in it and you're processing it, it's really, it's hard to make the share come from that place of true service, because it can have emotional attachments around it. And it can have like, some potential drama around it. It could be misconstrued. It could actually re-traumatize you depending on what people say about it. So coming from a place of like being really integrated with the story, I think is a great, powerful practice. And for me, this year, I've actually had so many stories that I wanted to share, but the cycle of the story didn't end for like a year. So I learned, so whatever the challenge is opens up. And it can be really easy to be like, oh, I want to share. I'm going through a challenge. It's going to really help me because being vulnerable on social media is really helpful. And people love that. And like, I'm going to get more likes and comments because vulnerability and authenticity is something people like and whatever. And you're still in it. And it's like, you can still be in something and share it, but it can be a little bit more tricky to make sure that it comes across the way that you really would love to come across. Like for me, I want to come across like, I'm not still figuring it out. It would be really hard to share something that I was still feeling funky about and still figuring out. But I have before. And it's, I think checking in with yourself and figuring out how you're going to relate to the share and how other people might receive it and how you'll be experiencing other people receiving it is a really helpful practice.
Totally. Oh, that's such a balance. I feel like I've been looking at that one recently because being really in it myself right now, I keep thinking, okay, I want to share this with people, but it's not fully cooked.
Yeah.
And so my sharing has been like, hey, everyone, I'm really in it.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's cool too.
Yeah, I'm really in it and that's it.
And you know what? When you say you're really in it and that's it, I think a lot of people have a hard time with that vulnerability because what happens is we want so badly to be either seen as an authority, be respected. We don't want to look like the student a lot of the time because that might hurt our business or it might hurt our ability to show up as an authority in our niche or whatever. And all these little funny things we think we have to put on this persona of like, I'm awesome. I'm going to teach you stuff. You're going to view me as an authority. I'm going to be the coach for you. Like all of this funny stuff that happens in the coaching space, I think. Just being like, I'm in something.
I love it.
It's so vulnerable, but
I know,
it's great.
it's so
I agree.
vulnerable. I mean,
It's a
I just
great
feel like
opportunity.
it's the next level. Like when something
Yeah.
makes me cringe now, I'm like, that's the thing I have to do.
Yeah.
And then I think,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, people are going to think I don't have it all together. And then I was like, wait,
That's actually
I
okay.
literally don't have it all together. And I
Nobody
want people
does.
to know that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just learning. We're all just learning. And then, of course, the moment you put it out there, you get like a flood of messages saying, I'm so glad you talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of
Yeah.
yourself on your podcast. And wow, it's just like, this is just what it is.
Yeah.
You
And I
know?
think that's totally like another level of mastery.
Mm.
And I think it's such a beautiful opportunity. And I totally don't necessarily advise against it. I think finding that place where you're like, I'm the student, I'm learning, and I'm in it. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cool level.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cool like opportunity to let yourself be vulnerable and not have to show up as any specific thing for any specific outcome.
Yeah. And I also think we're both the student and the master. I
Totally,
mean, these
yeah.
are the cycles of life, the expansion and contraction and the dance and the seasons. And I think that it invites people to say every single part of me is okay and it's welcome here.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's a really beautiful thing that sharing your heart allows you to do.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I would love to talk about your experience at Soltara because that place is obviously so near and dear to my heart. It is the birthplace of this podcast in many ways. And how did you we were talking about the call with ayahuasca, the call and sensing when something was right for you. Was this your first time working with ayahuasca?
It was my second time.
Your second time. Mm-hmm. So do you want to just maybe take us through the trajectory of your plant medicine experience a little bit?
Yeah, totally. So the first time I did any kind of psychedelic was one time with mushrooms, but I didn't, like my first time I've taken anything, I took a low enough dose to not feel it. Just for
always
my own.
A smart choice.
Yes. Yeah. I'm like, okay, didn't feel it. Got it. Next time I'll do a regular amount or whatever. I'll do a dose that's correct for my body. The second time I did mushrooms was with a couple of girlfriends. We set an intention. We had an Airbnb for the evening and we had a really just fun, lovely time. Lots of laughter, lots of universal awarenesses. So much fun. And then my first ayahuasca experience, interestingly enough, a friend of mine had a birthday. And he...
It sounds like a weird birthday.
You don't even know.
Oh, your face right now.
So this is my first time doing all of these medicines, but we did DMT the first night, LSD the next day, and ayahuasca the next day.
Not recommended. Not recommended at all.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard so many different things. I thought it was fine. Definitely a different experience.
It's like a festival. It's like a festival.
No, it was like a ceremonial.
No,
like,
but
weekend.
I mean, that's kind of what people do at festivals.
Oh, really?
It's like one substance after the other.
Yeah,
but,
fair.
So this was, and how old were you at this point?
25.
Okay.
Yeah, not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I've done DMT twice. I've done mushrooms maybe 5-6 times. The first ayahuasca experience was that weekend. After the first 2 nights, I think going into the ceremony, it was ceremonial and it was beautiful. I think I didn't prepare diet-wise as well as I could have, so I had a lot of nausea for the first couple of hours, and I didn't have any didn't have any awarenesses outside of just the pain in my body from the nausea. And then the second half of the journey, I was really overindulging. Now that I've learned from Soltara what this really is, overindulging in the crying experience I had because I was wailing for like 3 hours. And I was experiencing my partner John's previous suicide attempts, which was interesting. It was like whatever feeling of just
because he was there with you.
Mm-mm.
Oh, he wasn't.
Mm-mm.
Oh, you were just hooked in.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and I don't know how well I integrated that one because he actually had an attempt that night.
Wow.
And it was confusing for me to, I think it was
Wow.
I know, it was very interesting.
You didn't know this was occurring. And then how long had you been together at that point? Pretty newly.
4 months.
4 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It was so interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in terms of integrating that one, it was very just confusing.
Oof.
Yeah,
That's
it was a
heavy.
little funky.
Yeah. But when you say overindulging in crying.
Well, so at Soltara, they talked about when something is coming up for you, don't shove it down, but there can be a turning point where you can be overindulging in whatever that emotional experience is, which was like a cool thought. I was like, that makes sense. And I heard once that an emotion lasts 90 seconds, but we perpetuate it. So I think, yeah, they were saying that like you can kind of get locked in some respects, and correct me if I'm wrong, to whatever the emotion is that's coming up, and you can like just be really locked into the cycle of feeling it and feeling it and feeling it and indulging it and indulging it and indulging it. But yeah, it was just a lot of crying, like just like 3 hours. So maybe it wasn't an overindulge, but that's what it was for me that first time. Not sure how well I integrated it. And then I had gone on to do, like the mushroom journeys were over, the next year or so. And then this ayahuasca experience called to me. I think Soltara reached out many months before we even went. We went in for New Year's 2019, and I think Soltara reached out maybe in June of that year. And John and I were like, oh, this is awesome. This looks like a really cool place. And we didn't know travel-wise. I was really busy, so I was like, I don't know, maybe later. And then he's been going on such a beautiful healing journey for himself. And he had said a couple of times, I feel like there's like something that really needs to be purged. Like I feel like there's blackness, and he kept having dreams about purging. And I was like, maybe we need to go.
Whoa.
I know. Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe we need to go.
I also had dreams about purging before I ever went. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's having dreams about purging.
So he's having dreams. And it just, I think there was one point where we were just like, we should go together. I think it'd be a really awesome thing to do together. And I think we booked the New Year's one because we're like, what a cool thing to do right at the year's end and like close out the year like that. And we booked it. So it just felt like a really lovely thing to do together. Him and I have been on such a healing journey in our relationship. There's been so much beautiful, beautiful work that we've done together as a couple, where we have supported each other in allowing for, like we said before, the space for all of ourselves to exist, and for all of our shadows and all of our stuff to like be in the room and really allow for the healing, for like just all of the coming up and outness of the nature of healing and the nature of ayahuasca. So we did 2 podcast episodes about it on my podcast. First one was lots of context settings. We wanted to make sure, it was the first time introducing psychedelics to my audience. So I wanted to make sure that
How was that for you?
It was cool.
Were you at all apprehensive of kind of coming out?
Yeah. There was definitely a level of apprehension. Trying to like get myself back in that headspace. Yeah, I think I just maybe didn't want to come across the wrong way, or I think I just didn't want it to be. I knew if I had to talk about it, it wasn't going to be like a, oh, by the way, haha, like let me make a quick joke about it in a caption. It had to have a level of context set. So I think the apprehension was around making sure that I set the context the right way, that I didn't miss out on anything in terms of setting conversation, talking points around like safety stuff and not being frivolous and having a sacred kind of experience in relation to the medicine. And I just didn't want to come across the wrong way, I guess. And I wanted to make sure that I was doing the due diligence to the medicine in explaining it in a way that gave it the respect that it really deserves. So the first episode was a lot about that and, setting context for both of our histories with psychedelics. And then the second one was all into all the journeys and everything. Yeah.
So for those who haven't heard that episode, and I'm sure everyone will run to that afterward, and I'll also link to that in the show notes of this episode for anyone listening. But if you want to just in a succinct way, maybe describe what the trajectory, I feel like everyone's medicine experience of the week has this sort of trajectory, and it kind of takes you on this ride, and you don't have to you can go into as much or as little detail as you want, but kind of like if you could,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love at Soltara how they describe, I did the 3 ceremony shorter experience, and they describe the first night as a takeoff, the second night as the turbulence and the flying, and the third night as the landing, which I really resonated with. The first night, I came in with a lot of fear and anxiety, and there had been some material that I was definitely repressing, and I didn't want to look at it. And I came in with a lot of anxiety, I think, knowing that I was trying to hide it with my intentions. I was like, maybe ayahuasca won't know if I say a different intention. It's I hope God doesn't hear this. It's so funny the way that we do that.
Totally.
So I came in with lots of anxiety. The first night I took a regular dose, and it didn't actually hit me enough to have any experience, which is totally fine. That's been my journey with medicine in general. Just take enough to the point where I know and understand how my body relates to the dosage, especially with a new one. And the second night, tons of anxiety during the day. I really love at Soltara how they have the pre-ceremony yoga, and it's so beautiful and slow and grounding, and the breath work, it's so nice. It's it really helps alleviate so much of the being out of your body, and it really just puts you in your body, which is so perfect for the experience. The second night, I remember doing a regular dose, not feeling it, taking a second dose, and then absolutely feeling it. There was, for me, a general sense of communicating with the medicine and bodily sensations more than a direct conversation. Tons of sweating and yawning and pulling at my muscles. And there was a general sense of discomfort, which I related to as this funny thing us humans do is we cling to comfort, and we do so many things to keep us comfortable, cozy blankets and warmth and people around us and salt. On the dieta, there's minimal salt and minimal snacking and minimal whatever. And when you're there in ceremony, you're just in an uncomfortable place where you just put yourself kind of in this raw, open place to allow the medicine to really work through you. And I remember craving comfort, feeling uncomfortable. Sometimes the Icaros hit me in a weird way, and my body would be ugh. And I was just listening to people next to me. And there was a point where I felt like I was in labor, not pain-wise, but just the feeling and the knowing of women who are in labor, knowing that you're going to be there uncomfortable for however many hours, 1 day, 2 days.
You can't escape it.
Yeah. And I was I just have to sit in this. Oh my God. Yeah. I'm when is this gonna, I was just having to sit there.
Yes.
And the thing that came up through that was recognizing what stuff I was allowing to sit in my body uncomfortably without talking about it with my relationship. And the third night was a very similar experience. I had a lot more nausea the third night. I had a vision of being in a swamp with bugs and frogs. And the swamp, you seem like you had a swamp moment.
I had a swamp. Okay. I'll tell you about it after. I had
your eyes are darting.
I totally had a swamp.
So I don't know if this was your swamp, but my swamp was the swamp of repressed emotions and where they go to get toxic.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, this is where repressed emotions live.
Oh my God.
And my repressed emotional experience was very much so one of having all these thoughts about my relationship that I knew weren't mine. I was like, I love my relationship. I want to be in it. But all of these funny thoughts of like, maybe I don't want to be in it. Maybe I want this instead. Maybe, and like having all of these judgments against my partner. And it was like, all of these yucky thoughts were coming from somewhere. And I was like, this isn't me. What is this fucking yucky place? Like, what is this? Like all of these repressed emotions of things that I haven't spoke up about or haven't talked about out of fear, the people-pleasing thing coming back up again, the core wound, which is like always my work. And so it was like this like yucky swamp of repressed emotions and discomfort, and recognizing that the more you let something sit, the worse it gets, it just was a physical manifestation of that like yucky emotional experience.
I love that. Oh my gosh, the swamp of repressed emotions. That's like, I love, that's so poetic. Mine was actually the bog of self-hatred. And
that's so poetic also.
Yeah. And it was
all
like
these funny places inside.
This like somewhere in the deep south, this swampy, weeping willow hanging, cold, dark, dank sort of the flies and the frogs. And I actually had skulls bobbing around me in this swamp, this bog of self-hatred that I was sitting in. And what it was is I was just trying to escape this thought initially of I had one aspect of myself saying I hate myself. And then I had another aspect of myself saying, that's ridiculous. You don't hate yourself. You have a great life. What are you talking about? But unknowingly, I was actually repressing it further by saying that.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't understand that. So I got stuck for a very long time. And then at one point, I got so exhausted by the back and forth of the thoughts. I said, okay, yeah, I hate myself. And I had to sit with like the embodiment of the weight of that thought and feeling.
Yeah.
And it was the bog. So suddenly I just found myself in this cold bog, freezing with these skulls bobbing around. And I was like, I can't leave. I have to sit here until it's not here anymore.
Wow.
And that felt like an eternity. But
how did you get out?
By opening to it and just
allowing it.
And just being like, okay, I'm not going to fight this. Some aspect of me is hating myself. Mm-hmm. Wow, that makes me want to cry. That makes me feel so sad. And just allowing that sadness and starting to gently and inquisitively just ask what was there and nurture it and allow it and be like, all right, I relinquish myself to the fact that this may never change. Because, you know, when you're in the medicine space, everything feels like infinity. I was like, I may have to sit here forever in the bog of self-hatred.
This is my new reality.
But you have to, because if some layer of you is still fighting it, you're just spinning your wheels. You're stuck in the mud.
And the recognition that it's always going to be there if you don't do the work now.
Totally.
Which is really, I think, what ayahuasca's for.
Right.
It's, to me, another awareness I had was it like all of the ways that my ego was protecting me from feeling those repressed emotions was like lifted from the medicine. And it was like, this protection structure is going to go over here. And you're just going to feel whatever the rawness is over here. And you have to sit here and feel it and experience it and embody it and like metaphorically see how it manifests physically in like a environmental sense in the world, in the earth, like the swamp and the yuckiness. And you're like, experience this so you know what happens when you protect yourself from feeling it. You don't allow it to be there and you resist it. And it's going to live here unless you do the work and like let it come up. And that's what the whole purging is like, let it up and out. And I purged on the third night only, and it was blackness from the swamp.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny how when everyone talks about their purging,
there's this intuitive sense of what it was. Like, oh, I know I've said on this podcast, I'm sure, you know, I was purging my control. And people are like, how did you know that? But you just have a knowing of what it is that you were holding on to that's now coming out. And there's just such a sense of
Well, it gives you an awareness of the things, the knots that you're working with inside of yourself.
The knots inside. I love that.
Yeah, like the little knots. And when you have a sense of what that actually is, you're experiencing and like physically experiencing whatever those things are. And a purge is symbolic. And it's symbolic of whatever is existing in your body and is coming up and out to be released.
Did you have one moment, I mean, you talked about your core wounding, but did you have one moment that was just so hard to face? Like maybe a super blind spot or like just an ugly aspect of yourself that came up and you were just like, no.
Yeah. Well, earlier before I think we pressed record, we were talking about being in an open relationship. And we had a whole situation where there was someone that I connected with, and with him, he has a lot of stuff still to work through with his ex-wife. And this
new person you connected with, or with
John.
Okay.
And like, there's just a lot of negativity between the two. And he, for his own healing, really needed to cut her out of his life and anyone associated with her and that time of their life. And it really needed to be for him a clean, like, no. And this person that I connected with was like 2 degrees away from her, enough to the point where it literally felt unsafe for him for this person to be in my life. And we had been on a whole journey of that for like 5 or 6 months, where I was really, really resisting that and had a lot of challenges with it. And I hadn't told him up until that point, but I was actually seeing the guy, not sexually, but just seeing him without telling him. So the whole week that we were there, like that came up, and it was
whoa.
And yeah, it was quite a bit. And there was so many parts of my ego. And my people-pleasing thing, it's like the core wound is feeling like my authentic self is painful for other people. And because I knew it was going to be painful, it was in the deepest resistance of sharing that. And we have a very honest relationship where we share more things, I think, than most people. We just share. And that was one thing that I was like, I cannot share this. Like, there is zero way. Because like the pain, the things that I've been struggling with around stuff like that is I go into this shutdown mode where my body literally goes into a freeze mode where thoughts go away. I kind of like dissociate from myself. It's a deep protection mechanism.
Like a catatonic state almost.
Yeah. It's like, what are you feeling? I'm like, just numb. Like a full psychological checkout. So my body is terrified of that feeling. And it's happened a couple of times. And the fear of going into that, I think that underneath the fear of hurting somebody is the fear of feeling that feeling. Because it's almost like this, there's no way for me to win here. My authentic self is hurting them. I don't know what to do or how to be. And it's like deeply terrifying. So that was the thing that I really had to face. And since our integration has been occurring, we decided to close off our relationship and really just do the work on ourselves to uncover what all of that was and why it all occurred and what we can do moving forward to support each other and creating even more safety to share what's coming up. Because the only reason people lie is because they don't feel safe to tell the truth. And John always says that, because in his marriage, he cheated and he lied and he acted out of his own patterns and trauma. And that's what people do. There's so many people that cheat and lie, and people just don't feel safe to be who they actually are. Or they don't feel safe to have the feelings that they're having or to express the feelings. And safety is like, is there a consequence for this? If yes, I can't say it, or I won't say it, or it's going to be really hard to say it, or maybe I'll just avoid it. And we go through so many twisty, windy, manipulative things to avoid that conflict. And I'm a 9 on the Enneagram, and which is like conflict avoidant peacemaker number 1. So like my core thing is conflict avoidance. So that's either manifested in not speaking my own desires and not saying, or even like not even knowing who I am and what I want, because I'm just so disconnected from it as to avoid conflict, or being connected to it and then not saying it. So it's been a really awesome journey, because it gave me an even deeper level of opportunity to connect to myself and continuously feeling safe in my own body to just be me and where I'm at. Yeah.
Wow. So beautiful, and such a hard thing to do, to go through that experience and have your partner there too. And then probably you guys were staying in the same room, I'm assuming. So it's like you're both just opening yourselves up to your deepest core woundings and then being mirrors for each other. Oh, wow.
Yeah, we didn't even get into his experience because he was obviously having stuff.
Right. No
like
doubt.
In his own journey. So.
Well, my hope is to snag him for this too at some point and hear his story as well. But wow, that's a lot. And so here we are as we record this. What month is it? March.
Yeah.
So you went in December. Mm-hmm. So the dust is maybe settling a little bit from the experience. How are you feeling now? And how is the integration process going?
It's going really well. Yeah. It's actually been awesome.
Are you doing specific things to help with
that? So coming out of it, we really wanted to make it a priority because we really are committed to each other. We're just really clear that we're going to be together. And there's just like in a conscious, honest relationship, you have to also be committed to continuously looking at any stuff that is creating barriers between you two and creating any level of separation and any heart closing stuff. So we did find an awesome therapist in New York that we've been seeing every so often. But we've also just really, we've just like really been committed to opening up all of those conversations and working through whatever other knots were still there. And obviously with integration, you come back, you feel good, you're doing your thing, and then you can very easily slip back into old patterns. So for me, the feelings were lots of like heart wall closing to repress the emotions. And that manifests as like just feeling closed off in general from loving, which is just painful for both people. And because I now had an awareness of what that was, my work has always just been to speak into it whenever it came up. So whenever there was a feeling of heart wall kind of closing, now he knew what that was and I knew what that was. So we were able to just have the awareness in the space to be like, it's back, let's move through this. Like there's something on my heart, obviously, that is feeling unsafe again. Like let's create that environment to have this safe conversation for whatever that is. And there's been a lot of movement. Like there's just been so much really, really awesome movement where there's a lot of those walls have really come down. And I realized how painful it is to have a wall around your heart, not just for the other person, but for yourself. It's like tiring and painful to close off your heart. And it's free and liberating to have it open.
I feel like you're speaking directly to me right now. This is really, and it's the bravery it takes to say, to sit across from someone you love and say, I'm feeling closed down to you right now. Like I am looking in their eyes, like I'm looking at you and saying, I have an aversion to you right now.
Yes.
Like, that is so scary.
It's so scary because you don't want to hurt them.
And you want to trust that they're going to say, oh, you're having an aversion to me. That's fine.
Yeah. Of course, it's
but
like
the strength that it takes
for both people,
but the rewards. I mean, the rewards when you can have a relationship like that too. The intimacy is just.
Well, otherwise the other answer is just avoid it and don't be together. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't really an option for us. Mm-hmm. But yeah, totally.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah, before we pop off, you told us a little bit about your book. You do coaching. I've seen you do this amazing stuff with these archetypes that you work with. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit and maybe your coaching programs and kind of where people can find you online.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that I would love for people to go to is the Entrepreneurial Archetype quiz. .com. It's hard to spell, so you can find it on my Instagram if you want, or amandabucci.com/quiz is easier.
You picked
people don't know how
not easy words.
I was like, it can't be anything else but this. I don't care. We actually bought all of the domains of the misspellings.
And redirected them all. Yeah. That is brilliant.
I was like, people are going to misspell this and we have to catch them. It's
have a lot of faith in humanity. No, I think that's super smart.
I mean, it's a hard word, but I was like, it has to be this. I'm not going to like make it a different name.
I want you to like post a photo of all the domains. That would just be so funny.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right. Awesome.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
So the archetypes are something I came up with after going on a journey of understanding myself and how I relate to entrepreneurship and how I relate to the things that feel the most natural, the things that I am good at and proficient at that feel like an asset to the thing that feels like the most me. And then the things that feel like I can be skilled in, but I'm not super drawn to. And also the things that feel really arduous and feel really out of alignment. So the archetypes are creator, coach, teacher, and entrepreneur. And I found that everyone seems to fall into those in some level of percentage breakdown. And if you take the quiz, you'll find out your primary archetype. We're going to be creating a secondary one to help you figure out the actual breakdown and tons of extra stuff for support on that. But it really, for me, in my journey of recognizing, what are the things that really like allow me to be in a flow? What are the things that help me feel like I'm challenging myself, but not in a place of doing something that's really unnatural for me? And where is like the business model that allows me to just be in the most optimal place to attract abundance? And I recognize that people resist abundance when they're in the wrong kind of spot and they're doing something they think they should be doing something because other people are doing it, starting a podcast because it's like the next step, or hosting an event because it's the next thing that you should do, or starting a group coaching program when you really just don't want to do that, or any of these funny things that we do. And I think experience is so helpful. But when I really allowed myself to validate myself for who I actually was, which as a quick example, my core is creator first, coach second, teacher third, and entrepreneur last. Which is interesting, but for the last 2 years, entrepreneur was really the front runner because I decided I really wanted to scale my business and I had so much potential and opportunity. And there's so much growth that can come from integrating all the things that you aren't great at, which is a really powerful thing to understand about the archetypes as well, is that you are all of them. And if you haven't integrated the other ones, they can really help support you. But for where I was going, I was allowing the entrepreneur to be number one. And what was happening was my creator, which is my number one, my real number one, was slowly dying. I was slowly not doing my podcast. I was slowly using all of my creative energy for marketing my programs versus having conversations with people. And like my light went away, my spark went away, my radiance went away, the thing that made me went away. And I think people could notice that. I certainly noticed it. And I was like, there has to be another way to do this that isn't this. So I decided to burn down half of my business, stop running a program that I've been running for 3 years. I took on a certain amount of clients that I have for the whole year now. And I revitalized my podcast, and I'm writing a book, and I made this quiz. And funny enough, this quiz is doing incredible. And I got a really awesome opportunity from a friend that wants to help with the entrepreneurial stuff with the quiz. And I'm just like, this is what flow is. This is what it feels like. And I think that there's so many people out there feeling like they have to be someone that they're not to create results that they want. And that's just not true. So I'm just really excited to have that conversation too.
It's amazing. And I think what you're doing is you're actually providing a tool, a platform for people to essentially have awareness about what it is. I think people often need help with that. I definitely have. I've had a lot of coaches and people sit down with me and say, hey, what are you passionate about? And so I think you're doing that in a very succinct way. So step 1 is awareness. And then step 2 is like, you just kind of have to pull the plug. Like you talk about burning down half your business and just like going for it. And there's this huge level of trust. I think it's
trust
so
in yourself.
Scary when you look at something that you love and you want to do and you go, I know that's the thing, but
how am I going to make money?
How am I going to make money?
Yeah, like the how. And you have to surrender the when and the how.
Yeah. I mean, but how do you really do that? I mean, I tell people that all the time. I'm like, yeah, when I started this podcast, I had no idea why I was doing it. It was something I liked doing. And then they're like, yeah, but weren't you worried about this and that and this? I'm like, yes, a little, but if I didn't learn to compartmentalize that, then I never would have jumped out of the plane, so to speak.
Yeah, totally.
So, I mean, what's like 1 or 2 things people can do when they're feeling petrified? Like they kind of have an inkling, okay, I've wanted to be a writer my whole life, or I've wanted to do this invention my whole life, and they just don't because it doesn't seem like a rational, logical thought. Like, what would you say to those people?
I feel like a really beautiful thing is to learn from story. Like there was no logical reason why I should stop nursing and go do some random internet thing. Like there was no people before me that created a safety net of like, oh, this person did it, so I can do it. There was, but I didn't know about them. Even now with the archetype quiz, and like I had a 7-figure business, and now I'm like kind of scaling back and creating space and figuring out what the next thing is. And I think the next thing of this quiz is going to be really big and really awesome. And I can feel the potency and the potential. And I feel like there's clarity on how I can actually just be in the exact archetype that I am without having to be out of alignment anywhere. And I'm like, I didn't even see that. That wasn't even, I could never conceptualize that if I had tried to strategize it all out and map it all out.
Yeah, because it's like that solo entrepreneur thing where you just think you have to wear all the hats too.
Yeah. And then like sometimes you might have to in the beginning. And I think experience is really powerful. And I actually I would have never made this quiz had I not had all the experiences I had being a little bit out of alignment with the entrepreneurship being first and creator being last. So don't disregard the potential failures or the potential challenges, because they're actually all perfectly a part of whatever the next thing is. That's going to lead to the next thing and lead to the next thing. So take one step in the right direction. And if you need to reframe or reprogram what fear is for you, what really helps me with that is actually taking action. And taking like a small bit of action that's low stakes enough for me to be like, I can do at least this, and then see how that feels in my body and kind of, just do one step in the right direction. And you slowly reprogram your brain to recognize that fear is something that is offering you growth opportunity.
I think it was something I saw on Lori Harder, who was like, when you feel crippled, like when you feel stuck in inaction, take any action, because no matter what the outcome is, you're getting feedback. The world or someone or yourself might say, wow, that was wonderful. And that's great. That means you're going in the right direction. And if your worst fear comes true and people say that's terrible, you've gotten all this valuable information so that you can pivot and actually do the thing that you love, but like with quality.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with getting feedback and being like, this could be better. Like, great. But being able to be with yourself and how you relate to yourself. That's why I think doing any kind of content creation is such a personal development journey, because you have to really sit with any emotions that come up around receiving feedback about yourself and not identifying with the things that you create and allowing yourself to be the student like we've been talking about, and allowing yourself to be new at something and to try things for the first time and to put yourself out there and to experience whatever feedback comes up, which is essentially just being able to sit with whatever emotions come up and not repress them like we talked about in the journeys.
We're talking about content creation, and you, in my mind, are like the queen of quality, integrity infused content creation. I wondered if, as we near the end of this, if you have like maybe 5 succinct tips. It doesn't have to be 5, but things that are your absolutely like yes, must do's when you post.
Yeah.
And then maybe things that are just like instant engagement killers, or, because people have all these things about like, you have to have hashtags or you don't have to have hashtags. And for someone listening to this who is just like wants to give up on their social media journey, or is like an artist first and foremost, and is just like struggling to market themselves, and they're not the type of person who wants to listen to all these business and entrepreneurial podcasts like they just want a couple of tips of things like, tell me what to do and not to do. Do you have some things you can offer?
Yeah. I mean, I personally love helping people find fun again on social media. And the truth is, there's so much power in being fully connected to yourself and fully connected to your ideal customer. So the power and the magic is in the combination between the two. So when you're creating things that you love creating and you're not getting feedback, there might be some small tweaks that allow you to stay in your like love of creating that thing, but also meeting your ideal audience where they're at. Knowing who your ideal audience is so deeply powerful, because
how do we do that?
It's in the beginning, if you don't really have an audience, you share what feels awesome to you to share. You share a couple of different types of content you can create, things that you teach, like expert lessons, whatever. Story is always some of the most powerful and potent lessons, because we connect emotionally with story, and we also get to share our personality more with story. The fastest way to connect with people is opening your heart. So same thing with social media. If you open your heart and share, it doesn't have to be your biggest, baddest, scariest story about the time you cheated on your boyfriend or whatever it was. It can be like, hey, hi, I'm Amanda, and I am from Rhode Island, and I went to nursing school, and then I quit, and I do this now, and I love my dog, and this is one thing that I'm struggling with today. What about you? I built my audience by communicating with as many people as possible, and if you don't have an audience yet, having an audience allows you to get feedback and hear from people more of what they want. But if you don't, go out and find relationships. One of the things that people don't do as much as they could is to utilize the platform as a fun way to build connections. So if you know what industry you want to be in or what niche you want to be in, start being a member of that community. So in any local community, maybe there are fundraisers, maybe there's farmers markets, maybe there's workout classes you go to. If you're not a member of those communities and you don't participate, no one knows you. So if you're not participating and commenting on other people's stuff and introducing yourself and saying, hi, I love your content, I really appreciate what you put out there, or asking people questions, or supporting other people's content, sharing other people's content, tagging other people in your content, and being like, I am participating in this community and I'm going to add value to it. And let me just see what happens. And allowing yourself to just be in that space and giving up or relinquishing control of the outcome. Building relationships is the fastest way to increase algorithmic engagement as well, and algorithmic pull. Because if you have the people that are currently following you, that are the most engaged with you, actually building relationships and communicating with you, the algorithm knows if the relationship is potent, if both people are following each other, if they're tagging each other and stuff, if you're messaging each other and stuff, if you're commenting on each other's stuff. So two-way street. If you're doing that with as many people as possible, honestly, like message and introduce yourself via video on DM to everyone that follows you and be like, hi, thanks for being here. Tell me about you. That is a super fast way to build community. And I think people miss the opportunity to be a community leader by just hoping that people come to them and hoping that people show up and like their content when they're not providing the upfront initiation. It's kind of like, hey, why did you guys not invite me to this thing? But I mean, you never do anything either.
We don't know you. Yeah.
We don't know you. Who are you? Like, I would love to connect with you, but how am I supposed to do that if you're not putting yourself really out there? So initiating, starting conversations, being a community member first and foremost, and adding as much value to people as possible, but also creating and sharing things that feel really fun for you, that feel on your heart, that feel on your soul, that feel on purpose. And like, those are the things that I always go for. And if there's a level of stuckness, the thing that you always should do next practically is the thing that feels like the most resistance, the thing that feels like a lot of fear. Whether it's showing up on video for the first time or starting a podcast or posting a skit video of you doing comedy or singing or something like that, that feels like this is a part of who I am and I'm not putting it out there. Do that next, because that's always going to allow you to be on that path of most abundant potency. Things that kill engagement, I would say avoidance of being social on social media, not doing a good enough attempt at connecting to the person on the other side of the screen and making it too much about you, making it too much about other people and not enough about you. Finding that nice little balance between this is about me and about you, and we're going to connect on this is really powerful. Yeah, I always bring it back to
logistical, like editing posts, things like that. Like I've heard like if you post something and then you go back and you edit the caption, Instagram pulls it.
I think all these things are so funny.
I don't know. I mean, I hear a million things. I'm just like, I just have to do what I do.
You can't keep up, right? But, yeah, you got to just do what you do. Use the hashtags, try to post at the same time every day so the algorithm is kind of connected to it really just consistency and reliability is the core principle, and inconsistency can kind of make things a little jumpier, but you also can't be so wrapped up in all of like the little tiny details. If you're not hitting the big picture, you're totally missing the point. And 90% of the time, 95% of the time, it's a big picture principle rather than a minute algorithmic weird detail. Like, did I use 20 hashtags versus 30, or am I shadow banned, or why did people not like this picture versus this picture?
What's shadow ban?
When there's like hashtags that Instagram blocks.
Whoa.
Because of like bad stuff.
Definitely all that.
Yeah.
This podcast is definitely all that.
Yeah. God.
That's so funny. I
yeah.
had no idea that was the term.
Yeah. There's funny stuff, but I really wouldn't get too much. When you get so into the funny stuff, the little details, like I have tons of hacks and stuff, and there's hacks. They're not hacks, but like there's things that Instagram has as features that allow you to create more engagement, like using hashtags on stories or doing location tags or tagging specific people in your posts and creating content in the caption that makes it more engageable, right? There's tons of micro nuanced things that you can do. But if you're missing the macro, if you're missing the connection to the ideal audience member, if you're missing the opportunity to show a level more of yourself, if you're not telling stories, if you're not really focusing on adding value to your ideal customer, if you have like random shitty pictures that don't make sense together, right? Like common sense things. It's like if you're not giving your best effort at the basic stuff, and you're misunderstanding the human-to-human connection relationship aspect, you're misunderstanding the platform. Because AI, the algorithm is based on AI, and the AI of the algorithm is based on the human brain. And it's the same thing. So if we're automating and delegating processes in our human brain to filter out things that we like versus don't like, the algorithm is just processing whatever people are doing. So if people are like engaging with something specific And we have to understand, why are we engaging with something specific? Why would we like something versus not like something else? Why would we tune something in versus tune something else out? There's tons of threads I can go down. I have it all in my Instagram course, Codes of Content. So
Codes of Content.
It's all in there.
So check it out. And that's on your website? Mm-hmm. Is that Amanda Bucci?
AmandaBucci.com/codes of content.
Codes of Content. Amazing. Yeah. Another thing was like, I heard that people like photos of, it's so funny. You know who told me this was Sylvia, who does the social media at Soltara. And she was encouraging me on the Thought Room podcast Instagram, because I have my personal and then I have at Thought Room podcast. She's like, you should post more photos of you on the Thought Room podcast, because people generally like to engage with photos that are straight on, that are eye contact with the camera, and, you know, have like you with the guests. And I was like, oh man, that's so funny, because I was literally trying not to post photos of myself on this Instagram.
See, things always come up like that. And I would always encourage people to ask, why do you have that story?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I had to dive into it too. I was like, why? And it ended up being this,
seen,
it was
fear of looking
Amanda,
a certain
it was
way.
this total, I was so glad for the reflection, because the truth was, when I really get down to the bottom of it, is like, I wanted people to take this seriously. Yeah. And I was transitioning over from this older version of myself that was people appreciating me just physically. And I had all this anger around it that I was completely unaware of, that came up in my plant medicine work. Mm-hmm. But just like, I'm more than a physical body, or, you know, I'm more than just a cute girl. And I didn't want people to follow my podcast because
I think you're cute
or
whatever.
Of my physical body. And so I just didn't put it on there. But at the same time, like, this cute physical body is a part of me. You know what I mean? And it's,
and then you're like rejecting that part of you.
Exactly. So it's like, whoa.
That's why I always say to go into those stories. Because even if you hear them from someone else and you just take on the belief of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do pictures of myself because blah, blah, blah. You can find Instagram accounts that work and are engaging in all different things. There are plenty of Instagram accounts where you don't even know who runs it. There's plenty of quote only, image only, meme only, infographic only accounts that work great. There's video only, there's skit only, there's picture only, there's so many different types that work. So it's kind of the saying that everything can work.
Right.
But your work is breaking down whatever stories you have about why you can't do X, Y, and Z.
Totally. And it makes no sense for me to have an Instagram that doesn't feature me when it's your podcast. This is me.
Yeah.
Hi,
this is me.
Yeah, I've done it twice. I've like posted a couple photos now of me with the guests, and it's funny. Those do get the highest engagement. So it's part of my stepping out there and being brave. I'm going to keep doing it.
And it's funny because it's not always that it's a rule that pictures of humans get better engagement, because that's not the rule. It's only the rule for you if it's your work.
Right. Interesting.
So interesting.
I love it.
Yeah.
Amanda, thank you. This has been so educational and beautiful in so many ways.
Conversation.
I could go with you forever. I know I could. I'm so grateful for your time. Yeah. And so once again, it is Entrepreneurial Archetype or Archetypes? Archetype.com.
Yeah. Or you can go to amandabucci.com/quiz.
Any way you want. And Amanda owns the domain.
Not too many fucks up. Just different E's and I's and stuff.
Just Google it as best you can.
Yeah. Or you can just go to my Instagram and click on it.
Yeah.
Which is easy.
And your Instagram is just your name.
Amanda Bucci.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for listening.
See you soon.